What's going on, everybody? This is Tommy Vext, the Lone Wolf, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious Podcast.
There you go. Hello, dude.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Bruce. There's my partners, Rena and Chris. I appreciate you taking the time, man.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Rena. Thanks, Chris. Are you guys in Boston or?
I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I'm in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Guess where I am? Somewhere completely different.
You're in the Golden State. I can see the bridge behind.
Oh, yep. That's a complete scam. Like, where in the world is Carmen San Diego? But this is a podcast version. So Reina Rinkinen is in Finland.
Oh, in
Helsinki. Yeah.
I've been to Helsinki once.
Oh, you did. Tell me about that trip.
So I was on. It was 2017, and I was on tour with Five Finger Death Punch and In Flames. And two things that were very strange to me was in Helsinki, right by the hotels, they opened their first Taco Bell, and it was so bizarre to us because in America, Taco Bell is not like a nice restaurant, and you guys had lines of people waiting to get into Taco Bell and security guards, and like it was like serious.
Wow.
I'm so ashamed.
No,
But
it's
like,
awesome.
let me just let me just get all the glamour out of this and tell you that Finnish people will stand in the similar fucking line for a free bucket. For a free motherfucking bucket. It's a thing that actually happens. Like,
Really?
Yeah. Like if a local version of a Target or whatever will hand out free buckets as like a gimmick for, get some more sales. We will have those same fucking lines. We stood in line for Burger King for weeks. Those lines persisted in Helsinki. I wasn't kidding when I said I was ashamed. I truly am. I really, really am.
I mean, we have that here. Like we have, I collect sneakers, and people will sleep outside.
Yeah.
Overnight for the store to open up, and you're like, and I lived in LA. I'm from New York City originally, and I lived in LA for like 16 years, and you would see people like sleeping in tents on Melrose Avenue outside the sneaker stores, just waiting for the doors to open so they could maybe get a pair of sneakers. It's wild.
I remember when it was like that for concert tickets before the internet.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh
And that
yeah.
makes sense.
Ticketmaster, right?
Oh yeah. So I remember when I was in 1997. Now I'm dating myself. In 1997, me and my buddies I was in my first band. We were called the Dogs of War, and we're a high school band and Ozfest. So we had gotten the Ozfest VHS tape of Ozfest 96. And then soon, like a month or two later, they announced Ozfest was going to be in New Jersey, right? We were from New York. So we got up on a Saturday morning and made my dad drop us off to get tickets at like 6:45 a.m. Because in our minds, we were like, it's going to be like, it's the only Ticketmaster in the neighborhood. The whole neighborhood's going to be, nobody was there.
That's funny.
And it was like, it was Ozzy and Black Sabbath and Marilyn Manson and Pantera and Fear Factory and Machine Head Power Man 5000, Neurosis, Order.
Just a few bands.
Typo Negative.
Right, just a few bands.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Mind blown.
So anyway, let's bring it back to Tommy Vext, because I know we don't have all that much time. But Cancel the King, the new single, killer single, by the way. What's been the response to it so far? Has it been pretty good?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and again, like, I don't really think I'm not particularly putting songs out as singles. Now that I'm a completely independent artist, I kind of have just decided I'm going to release a track a month until the album comes out. And this song, this was one of the first songs that some of the songs in the album were supposed to be on the Bad Wolves record.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the ones that was written after the departure, after I was kind of dealing with cancel culture. And Yeah, I mean, I love the track. I worked on it with Josh Gilbert from As They Lay Dying and Hiram Hernandez and Don't Drop the Kiss.
Yeah, I see that. Sorry, they're falling apart.
They're getting old.
Kiss has been attacking Bruce all evening.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
tell us about your experience with cancel culture.
Well, I mean, so pretty much, for the past 2 years, I've been very outspoken about, I think the government overreach of policy, the response to COVID, vaccine efficacy, and kind of sort of, I didn't really identify as like conservative or Democrat or anything. I kind of was always like in the middle. And I think I got kind of scared into the right side of the pool by some of the extremism that I was seeing, from the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, I think that, I think on a global scale, I think a lot of people will relate to this, that, we have a lack of positive options. And so, I was very public about endorsing Donald Trump over Joe Biden. And to me, it was completely sane. But obviously the media and also Trump's personality freaks people out. And so, there were 4 years of people like learning to hate the guy. Whereas now Joe Biden's been our president and he's destroyed the country more. He's destroyed the country more in the first year and I can't remember any president since I've been alive.
Can you explain how he's destroyed the country in a year?
Well, I don't think that Joe Biden I don't think he's in control. Obviously, he's obviously suffering from a debilitating mental, cognitive issues.
But how has he taken the country down? Explain it to me.
Well, I think all the policies of the extreme left, as far as, you see the defunding the police movement that the leftists have pushed, have caused a massive spike in.
None of those policies exist, though. Like, those policies don't exist. They've actually funded it more than they were before.
Okay, well.
So that's what I'm confused about. Like, the budget for law enforcement in the United States is $370 million more under Biden than it was under Trump.
Yeah, well, after when?
As of 2021.
Yeah, after massive riots and burning and looting,
that all happened under Trump, though. That didn't happen under Biden.
But that was all promoted by leftist congressmen and senators and state officials.
The violence wasn't promoted by them.
And most certainly was. I can send you a compilation reel. Even Kamala Harris is condoning and saying this is what we need to do. So
peacefully protest, yes, but not violence.
No, that's not.
It's like I live in DC. I live in the epicenter of it.
Sure.
And the stuff that was going on here wasn't really that violent. Like, there was in DC, there was. I know in Richmond, Virginia, there was a lot of violence.
It was bad here.
Yeah, and I know in certain cities there was, for sure.
In Los Angeles, it was the same. They were blowing up cars. I cleaned up the aftermath. So in Minneapolis, over 19 women were raped during the George Floyd riots. There were explosions. There were, I just got off. I did a podcast a couple months ago with Hawk Newsom, he's a good dude. He's the founder of the BLM chapter in New York, and he's also a very controversial guy with supposedly completely opposing views as me, but we actually agree on many, many things that were done wrong.
I agree. There was a lot of stuff done wrong.
I also think that Afghanistan was an absolute catastrophe. I think the manner in which that they withdrew from Afghanistan was an absolute catastrophe. And you have Jen Psaki and all these people saying, "Oh, there's no way we could have predicted this." Well, the people who are been put into position are obviously incompetent in doing their jobs that they could not have predicted the way that would have gone, because we've been doing we've been over there and in that region of the world with intel and working on the ground for over 20 years. So that's another problem.
I agree. That was a catastrophe. It was ugly to watch. It was terrible. But here's a question I have about that. They were kind of forced into a corner because of the way Trump just said, we're out of here. So how do you deal with it?
You asked me to explain why. I'm just explaining. Yeah. I'm going to rattle off the bullet points for you, and then
sure.
Happy to talk about it. So that's another thing. I think that it's shutting down the pipeline and then blaming Putin for the expense, the hike in gas prices is absolutely ridiculous, because only 3% of our crude oil comes from Russia. So it would only cost us a 3% increase in gas here. And I think that the gas companies are taking advantage of the situation, and the government is not regulating it, which is their responsibility. None of this would have happened if we didn't shut down those pipelines and put 73 American workers out of business. That's a fucking catastrophe that affects literally everyone. We just gave away another $40 billion to Ukraine, and the country is having the worst inflation that it's had in I don't know how many years. So I don't see how what my statement is erroneous in any way.
So first of all, the pipeline
just interrupt for a moment.
Yeah.
Because you brought up Ukraine, and clearly, the U.S. support to Ukraine is pretty crucial to the situation there. Do you think it's better that that you do send out help in the form of money rather than NATO get involved, because that is the next option, and that basically means World War III then?
Well, the issue is that I don't believe that Putin would have invaded Ukraine if Trump was the president. I feel like Trump, as much as Trump scared a lot of liberal people, he kept a lot of the world leaders that are psychotic.
Oh my God, you have got to be kidding me. This is that you can say a lot of things about Trump, but that dude was a lapdog to Putin. He was a puppet to Putin. You cannot be serious about that. I live right next to Russia. I'm very, very aware of what's going on. And most definitely that is not the case. That is not the case. That Trump was, and if he gets to power again, that's, probably Putin is going to die because of his cancer that he's poorly trying to hide, before that happens. But there is zero fucking chance that Donald motherfucking Trump, an admitted rapist, a person who makes fun of handicapped people, you're saying the people were learning to hate him for 4 years. I would hate anybody, walk up to me on the street and tell me how cool it is to grab women by the pussy and then do this to somebody to make fun of them. That's a shit person. He deserves to be hated. Nobody needs to be looking up to anybody like that, And for me, it's just insane that someone would be like, this is okay.
And again, this goes back to a lack of options, because you have Joe Biden, who is an alleged pedophile. His son is a crackhead. His son is also, I've seen videotapes of his son raping young girls, which you guys are not privy to. This guy's laptop and the dealings that he's done is insane. So it's difficult for me. A lot of this stuff that gets put out there, I see these things. I know Rudy Giuliani. I know I've seen the tapes. And so I'm not defending anyone's point, but I do believe that Joe looks absolutely incompetent, and so other fucking world leaders who are insane are going to do whatever they want because they think that the teacher's not in the classroom. That's what I think.
Well, Trump was never the teacher. Trump was a threat to world security, and that was a widely acknowledged fact. That he was the biggest risk to face the entire globe, and since fucking Hitler, basically.
I'm going to take this back to the music for a second, because we're down the rabbit hole, which I thought we would end up being anyway. But
this is the thing. This is actually good discourse, because it's important for people who disagree to actually communicate and understand in a civil way other people's opinions, right? And I think that this is even though this interview, we have completely opposing views on political figures, I think it's also important for like anyone listening and audience members to understand the ability to look at each other and you know, we could see each other in video form, and I think empathy and understanding is so important because on social media, we have digital avatars and people wind up saying things or going too far because they lose the common respect. Whereas like I think it's important to engage and hear what other people's experiences are, you know what I mean? And then respectfully digest that.
One thing I want to you touched on the pipeline, and I actually want to talk about that because the closure of that pipeline directly affected my family.
Okay.
So my family lives in Alberta. They all work in the oil field, and that pipeline was going from Alberta down into the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Alberta actually was the only people working on that pipeline. There was no one in the U.S. working on it because the Supreme Court had blocked it because there was no proper environmental review, and they were just given a ticket. Okay, go ahead and start. So Alberta poured $4 billion into it, and there was like almost no one in the U.S. doing anything at that point. So even if that pipeline had been said, okay, go ahead, we're going to finish it, it wouldn't be ready until at least 2024, 2025. So it has no correlation on gas prices, although I do agree it should have went on, honestly.
But I gotta say, Tommy, that you're completely correct on what you said before. I just wanted to make a point of that. Like, you know, that is a key thing, that we can disagree and still be respectful. I would still freaking give you a huge hug if we were in the same room doing this, you know. But back to the pipe, sorry.
Yeah.
No, and I agree. And I think like this is like, you know, that this is the thing that like I really wished people did more of, was like have conversations of where they had different beliefs or different information, because that's how we are going to learn from each other. There was this thing about people being like, oh, those people are insane. It's like, no, they're not. They just don't believe what you believe. And unfortunately, I think over the past 2 years, there's been like sort of a religion made out of political views. And that's not good for anybody, right? Because, you know, you've seen throughout the course of human history when people are indoctrinated into believing only one set of things and they have contempt prior to investigation, wars are started, you know what I mean? And it's not good for the human race. So I appreciate you guys, you know, I appreciate that we don't completely agree on the same things and we can still talk about it. So thank you for that.
Thank you for, like, you know, sharing your views and like, you know, offering those added bits of information that, you know, Chris was asking for, and so on and so on. But yeah, it's you know, it's about finding a discussion culture where we can all, you know, respect facts. Because, like, you know, I think the biggest problem that came with the Trump administration was the normalization of the alternative facts, as Miss Conway called them. So they normalized lying, basically. They normalized, you know, there was no big scam. Nobody was trying to destroy the election or steal the election. There was no fucking cheating in the election, and they keep on with the big lie, and they're normalizing that. And that is like, you know, I feel like, you know, that there's normalizing of bad behavior, the thing that you're sort of like trying to avoid, and like, you know, you're advocating this civil conversation, but this is not fucking civil, you know. This is not civil. Grabbing people by the pussy is not civil, you know.
Yeah, and neither is sniffing children and smoking crack and fuck, you know what I mean. There's a lot.
But this is whataboutism, though. Like, you know, that this is again, like, I have not seen any proof of those. And if you have it, please send it to me, and I'll be like, promise to be open-minded and accept it if that's the case. But you know, the entire world saw how Trump was behaving, and he was making that behavior normal. You know, disrespect and misogyny. You know, all these things.
This is what I'll say about that sort of stuff is like, I don't think anyone thinks that that's okay. That's what I think. I don't know anybody that thinks that that's okay. I just don't.
Then you wouldn't vote for a person who advocates that, you know, because like, it's basically like, I'm an awful person, someone would think, because I think every person in the Catholic Church is complicit in child abuse when they stay in that religion, because it's such a prominent feature of that religion. So being in it, you endorse it because, you know, you're not getting out of it. You know, you would if you wanted to make a difference, because you can worship God without that building or.
No, I listen. I am one of the most outspoken advocates against child abuse and child trafficking. So and wherever it is that is, it needs to be destroyed. I personally, my personal belief is that pedophiles are not people, and that they should be put down. That's just my personal belief system.
I don't want to breathe the same air as them.
What's that?
I don't want to breathe the same air as them.
Yeah, I think if a dog bites a child, it gets put down. And I think that if an adult person physically abuses a child, I think they forfeit their right to be here. And that's just my belief. That might be extreme, but I know firsthand.
Yeah, well, you know,
I've seen how
it's again, like, you know, you have to take it one step further and like think about like how they ended up that way, because a lot of people who end up abusing children were abused as children. You know, like that is a cycle that happens.
But to
stop it,
a lot of people who were abused would never have a child.
I'm not saying all of them. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely complete. Yeah, yes. But then also because, like, you know, pedophilia has obviously, and for a reason, a huge stigma. People who have pedophilic tendencies can't find help. You know, that there's very little places where you can turn to, like, fuck, I'm thinking about really messed up shit and I want to make it stop. I want to never ever do anything to a child, because there are pedophiles out there that will never ever lay a finger on a child, but still they have that in their head.
There are free programs that there are sections of stuff like SLAA, like Sex and Love Addiction Anonymous, that specifically are there to help people who are victims of child abuse trauma so that they don't re-engage. And people who, and I'm not saying anyone who has tendencies or those issues, I'm saying people who act out on them.
Right.
Like, you might think about killing somebody, but you don't actually kill them, then you didn't commit a crime.
True.
Right.
You know?
But yeah, so I'm just like, you know, things are usually not that simple, even though like that impulse is completely understandable. I have a 5-year-old, so if something happened to him, I would absolutely go and kill the person. I don't care what happened to them as a child; they would be fucking dead. You know,
I don't think you should go to jail for that.
Yeah, and like, you know, this is. But then, of course, like when you think about that, when it's like this poetic justice sort of a thing, it doesn't really function if it's on societal level that everybody gets to decide that I was crossed badly enough. You know, where's the limit? Rape victims, do they get to kill their rapists? Like, I would say yes, but, you know, but then, you know, things are not black and white. Maybe the dude didn't do it, you know? Like, now it's fucking dead, you know?
I probably agree on a lot more of the same stuff that we disagree with.
Totally.
So,
but hey, I think guys, Bruce, Chris,
I'll let Bruce go.
I was just gonna, Chris, if you got something, we've got like I don't know, like 8 minutes left in the recording here, but at some point I want to bring it back to why we're here, Tommy Vext. But
Sure.
Chris, if you've got something to add before we get
go
there,
ahead. Take it away.
I don't mind. Tommy, what's the? Are you gonna be doing the single thing then, and how is it going forward from here?
Oh, so we're gonna basically put out 2 more songs. We got 1 more. I just shot a video in Orlando. And the song's called "The War You Wanted." It's actually an anti-bullying song. And I worked with the Down Syndrome Foundation of Florida and the Dream Foundation, which is run by Charlie Rocket and John Chiarondo. It's pretty amazing. So there's a young man named Vincent who he has Down syndrome. He always wanted to be a wrestler, and his sister was a single mom. She went on a date. She was date raped with fentanyl. And she had an aneurysm, and she's paralyzed. So he wrote this letter saying he wanted to wrestle in the WWE to raise $1 million to buy his sister a wheelchair, like accessible house for their family. So, you know, obviously they got the letter. You know, 2 weeks later, they put this whole event together, called in a bunch of wrestlers from WWE, flew him to New York, we got a hookup, and they put his billboard up in Times Square. And and we set up a real wrestling match. And so,
Oh, wow.
filmed the whole thing. And then that was about a month ago. We raised the money. And then I just flew back and we made him the star of the new music video. And this song, I'm going to be granting him all like the publishing rights so he can use the song forever, in his wrestling career. And we're working on getting him a contract with WWE so that he's the first pro wrestler with Down syndrome and Federation history. Yeah. So, and I've been working with that foundation since about 2017, and they do great work, and I really those kids kind of will change you. They're so innocent and they're really misunderstood. They're very special, and they all have like very specific things that they're almost extraordinary at. It's like almost inhuman. They kind of zone in on one thing, and and they know everything about it. And so, anything that supports the foundation, and they raise a lot of money helping these families who have Down syndrome family members to like live their most full life. And just about that, it's a good thing.
Thank you, my friend, for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciated the information that you guys had too, and I'm glad that we can. It's very good to be able to not agree and still have our humanity. You know what I mean?
It's mandatory.
I 100% agree. Like Rena said, we could all just hug it out and agree to disagree, and that's fine. But
when I also learned that about the pipeline, starting in Canada and not having even initiated the jobs here.
Yeah.
Time that it took. So I learned something too by listening.
It really affected Alberta badly,
yeah.
but it wouldn't be done, and it should have been done, but it was blocked by the Supreme Court of the United States for environmental review. And then Trump just said, well, build it anyways, but they didn't know if they should or not because what was going to happen with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I actually wanted to ask, what do you think the implications of the Russia-Ukraine, this Russian invasion is going to play out like your guys' specs?
Well, my thought is that there's going to be a famine in Africa and in Southeast Asia. There's going to be a massive famine, and that's going to put a huge inflationary rate on commodities like grain, for instance.
Is that because Russia is a huge exporter of grain, or
Ukraine?
Yeah.
Ukraine supplies 33% of all of the food for Africa and Southeast Asia. 33%, and they're not planting right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously they can't.
Right.
No. So, there's going to be huge inflationary pressure, plus the fact that Europe is now about to stop taking Russian oil.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, the government needs to regulate gas and oil companies.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely do, because they're making record profits right now.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, inflation. But there's not one party that would even think about doing that. And I don't understand why. Because for instance, if Biden said, that's it, we're putting a cap, you can only say 30% profit max. The Republicans would say, it's a free market, you can't do that. And then there would be this pushback. If the Republicans went in and said, hey, we're going to put a 30% tax on this, or a cap on this, their whole party would revolt against them because it's against the free market. So the free market doesn't work in certain situations, right? Like the free market doesn't work in education. It doesn't work in healthcare. It doesn't work in childcare. And when it comes to necessities like gasoline, for instance, right? It can work until the companies decide, hey, we got a monopoly on this. We don't care.
Right, jack up.
Well, I think that's one of the issues that the two-party system are failing. They're so at war with each other. They're not able to see the value in moderation and compromise. And until we get back to that sort of a place where everyone's more leaning towards the middle, we're not going to have we're not going to be able to deal with these kind of problems in any way that in any manner which is progressive.
But I'll say this as well. Being from Canada and knowing people all over the world from my job, in the US, I find it strange that everyone is blaming the president for inflation because the entire world is going through the exact same situation.
Yeah, we had a pandemic. That's what did this. You
know?
I
mean, China, the global supply chain shut down, and they can't get started back up. So, but it's unique in America that they blame the president for inflation. The rest of the world is like,
no, we don't. I don't. When I was saying the inflation is high, the fact that inflation is so high means that we shouldn't be allocating so much money to other countries. We are not only just Ukraine, we're giving tons of other countries money, which we've always done. And that serves a purpose for the USD. But at the same time, we're not in a position financially because of the pandemic to be spending that, and there's other things too. It's like there's other,
but how do you balance out the cost? So like for instance, right now, the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, right? Everyone holds it. If they don't keep that going, China takes that over. What happens if China takes over the world reserve currency? Would it have been worth spending the American money to stop that from happening?
Well, to be honest with you, the up and down of it is that the industrial war complex is the solution to this, but it's problematic.
It is, yeah.
Because if we put boots on the ground and we could, I mean, our military could easily just shut this down
easily,
and it would benefit us financially because then Lockheed Martin would step in and go up and all the defense contracts and all this other stuff. But then what does that look like?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's a nuclear war.
Then we have to get into, then we have to initiate a war with that nation, which a lot of people don't want to do, especially right now, because most Americans don't feel, and I don't think most Americans have felt, I would say 50% of Americans have not felt like we've had competent leadership for 6 years. So nobody. No one.
I'll be honest with you. Most of the world doesn't think the U.S. has had competent military leadership since George W. Bush.
Correct.
Like the general global population. I'm not talking about the United States in general.
No, that's completely on point.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. I've only lived in the U.S. now for about 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
but from what I've seen, there's never any well thought out strategies by anyone. It's just do this because there's too many small players and too many.
Correct. I think that
too many little things.
Oh, sorry, my alarm's going off.
We're up against time here. We've got about 30 seconds. No, you're fine. I enjoyed this conversation, but Zoom has less than 30 seconds left. So,
okay. Cool.
If you want to get your last point in, Tommy, that's fine, but we can call it there.
No, just grateful to talk to you guys, man. Thank you guys for
thank you for putting up with us and the good discourse.
Yeah, of course, man. Always happy to have a conversation.
All right, take her easy, man.
All right, guys,
good luck with the record. We'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Chris, saliva.
Okay.